I don't have a wife, kids, or a life. My brother's family made a big fuss at Christmas and took my savings. They just take up space. They all agreed with each other. I forced a smile and left. 3 days later, my voicemail was filled with their urgent messages. I never thought I would share this, but after what happened at our Christmas gathering, I need to talk about it. Just a heads up, this might be long, but I'm still thinking about everything. You know when you walk into a room and it goes silent? That's how my Christmas morning began. I got to my mum's house at 10 a.m., the exact time she asked me to come, but everyone else had already been there for hours. The Christmas tree was surrounded by opened gifts. The breakfast plates were being cleaned up, and my brother Andrew's son, Christian, was already busy playing with his new games. The first sign something was off was that they didn't wait for me, even though Mum told them to. This was our first Christmas without Dad, who died in October, and it felt strange. Mum hugged me tightly, but her smile seemed forced. My sister-in-law, Gabriella, barely looked up from her phone and just said, "Oh, you made it," as if I was a stranger who crashed their gathering. I put my gifts down by the tree, trying to ignore the awkwardness. Christian, bless him, was genuinely happy to see me and jumped up to show me his new gaming setup. He has always been a bright spot during family gatherings, but then Andrew jumped in. "Don't bother Uncle Dominic. He probably doesn't get these things anyway. He's too busy with whatever he does." His comment wasn't subtle. I've done well for myself. Working from home for a tech company while traveling, I want to do what makes me happy. Dad always supported my choices, even when they weren't the usual path like Andrew's. But since Dad passed away, the remarks about my life have become more common and pointed. Things really went downhill during lunch. Mom made Dad's favorite Christmas roast for the first time since he died, and everyone was unusually quiet until Gabriella broke the silence. "So, Dominic, any special someone in your life yet? At your age, you should think about settling down. Christian needs cousins his age." Before I could reply, Andrew jumped in. "Oh, he's too busy living the bachelor life. No wife. No kids, no real life, right?" He laughed, but it had a sharp edge. The way everyone else at the table either nodded or looked away told me they had talked about my life choices before. I stayed calm and focused on my food. "Actually, my life is pretty full. I'm happy with my choices." "Full of what?" Gabriella pressed, putting down her fork. "Working all day behind a screen and traveling to empty hotel rooms? That's not living. It's just existing. You're wasting your potential. Your father would have wanted—" My voice came out sharper than I meant. "Don't tell me what Dad would have wanted." The tension at the table was thick. Mom tried to switch topics by asking about New Year's plans, but Andrew wasn't finished. "You know what? We need to talk about this. The will reading is next week, and we need to be realistic." He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if he had some big wisdom to share. "You've saved up all this money with no responsibilities while we're trying to give Christian the best life we can. It's not fair." "Fair?" That's when I saw Mum's face, a mix of guilt. She wouldn't look at me. "What do you mean we need to be realistic?" I asked, starting to piece things together. Gabriella jumped in, her voice sweet but fake. "We've had some expenses. Christian's private school and the house repairs Dad promised to help with before he passed. We had to borrow against what we knew was coming from the will." My stomach sank. "Borrow from where?" The silence that followed was loud. Finally, Mum spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your portion, honey. They needed it. You have so much saved already and they have a family to think about." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "You took money from my inheritance without asking me." "Borrowed," Andrew corrected, as if that made it any better. "Honestly, what were you going to do with it anyway? You're just taking up space in this family, no real connections, no one depending on you, just floating through life, while the rest of us deal with real responsibilities." Everyone nodded, even Mom, though she looked pained doing it. The only one who appeared uncomfortable was Christian, who had stopped eating and was staring at his plate. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The room went quiet again, probably expecting an explosion. Instead, I smiled. "Thank you for lunch, Mom. I need to go." "Oh, don't be dramatic," Gabriella started, but I was already leaving. Behind me, I heard Andrew say something about me always running away from confrontation. I drove home in a daze. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was lighting up with messages, mostly from Mom, saying we needed to talk things through as a family. One from Andrew telling me to man up and face reality. I haven't replied to any of them yet. Instead, I called Dad's lawyer and left a message. "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to find out what they've done with my inheritance and what they mean by borrowing." The worst part? I keep thinking about Dad's last conversation with me just a week before he passed. He made me promise to take care of the family, but also to stand my ground. At the time, I thought he was just talking nonsense because of the medication. Now I wonder if he knew something. Something like this was going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I know I can't let this go. Not just for the money, but for everything it means. They want to talk about real life and responsibilities. Fine, let's talk. My phone is still buzzing. I think I'll let it ring for a while. Update. First, thank you all for the kind comments on my last post. I wasn't expecting such a big response. A lot has happened in the last 2 days, and honestly, I'm still trying to make sense of everything. What I found out goes way deeper than I thought. Yesterday morning, I met with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Wilson. He didn't seem surprised to see me, which was my first hint that something was wrong. "I've been waiting for your call," he said, pulling out a thick folder. "Your father left specific instructions about this situation. It turns out Dad knew everything. The meeting started with Mr. Wilson showing me a bunch of loan papers, all with my name on them. My signature had been forged on at least 6 different documents over the past year, each one taking money from my share of the inheritance, which Dad had left in a trust. The total amount, just over $285,000. Felt sick looking at those signatures. They weren't even good forgeries. But here's where it gets interesting. Mr. Wilson pulled out another document, Dad's real will, dated just 2 weeks before he died. "Your father changed this after a concerning talk with your brother," he explained. Then he showed me the bank statements. Andrew and Gabriella are in serious debt. Not just struggling, but drowning. The private school they brag about. They haven't paid tuition in months. Their house repairs, mostly paid for with credit cards. They've been living way beyond their means for years, using Dad's declining health to borrow money. While Mr. Wilson explained this, my phone kept buzzing. I finally checked it during a break. 27 missed calls, 15 voicemails, and dozens of texts. Some highlights. "Andrew, you're being selfish. Christian's future is at stake. Gabriella, your father would be ashamed of your behavior. Mom, please, honey, we need to talk this through. They made mistakes, but they're family." The most surprising message was from Christian. "Uncle Dom, I'm sorry about Christmas. Dad and Mom were wrong to say those things." That hit hard. The kid's only 12, but he seems to understand more than his parents. Mr. Wilson then revealed Dad's clever plan. The amended will has specific rules. Any money taken through unauthorized loans must be paid back before anyone can access their full inheritance. And here's the kicker. Dad put me in charge of overseeing the repayment plan. "Your father was very clear about this," Mr. Wilson said, showing me Dad's handwritten letter. He wrote, "Dominic understands the value of money and responsibility better than anyone gives him credit for. He'll make the right choices." Just as we were finishing up, Mr. Wilson dropped another bombshell. "There's something else you should know," he said, pulling out one last document. "Your brother came to me last month, trying to get you declared financially irresponsible. He wanted control over your entire share of the inheritance. That explained the recent comments about my life and travels. They weren't just being judgmental. They were building a case against me." As I left the office, another voicemail came in. This time, it was Gabriella, her voice trembling. "We need to talk. There are things you don't understand. The school is threatening to kick Christian out if we don't pay by next week. Please, we can work something out." I sat in my car for a long time reading through Dad's letter again. Near the end, he wrote, "Son, they'll try to use guilt. They'll call you selfish. Remember, real responsibility isn't about giving in to demands. It's about making tough choices for the right reasons." The next paragraph surprised me. "Check the garage at the old house. Bottom shelf behind the paint cans. I left something there you'll need." I drove to Dad's house, well, Mom's house now. No one was home, which was a relief. The garage was just as Dad left it, his tools neatly arranged. Behind the paint cans, I found a small fireproof safe. The combination was my birthday. Inside was another letter, several USB drives, and a detailed list of every loan Andrew had taken over the years, not just from my inheritance, but from Dad too. The amounts were shocking. The letter started with, "If you're reading this, they finally pushed too far. Here's everything you need to protect yourself and help them learn." My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. "They're coming over tomorrow morning. Please come. We need to sort this out as a family." I looked at the safe's contents spread out on my desk. Then at Dad's letter. The final line read, "Sometimes love means standing firm. You're stronger than they think." Tomorrow's meeting should be interesting. I've made copies of everything and sent them to Mr. Wilson for safekeeping. I'm done being the family pushover, but I'm also not looking for revenge. Dad trusted me to handle this the right way, and that's what I'm going to do. The latest text is from Christian. "Are you coming tomorrow? I hope you do. Someone needs to tell them the truth." Out of all the messages, that's the one I'm focusing on. I'll update again after tomorrow's meeting. Something tells me it's going to change everything for everyone involved. Update 2. I should have known something was wrong when I pulled up to Mommy's house this morning and saw 3 extra cars in the driveway. Andrew hadn't just brought Gabriella, he'd brought backup. Our Aunt Linda, Uncle Pete, and a family friend who's a financial advisor were all sitting in the living room, like it was an intervention. The first thing Andrew said set the tone. Good, you're here. Now we can discuss how to fix the mess you're making of this family. I almost laughed. Really, this was their plan. Mum was nervously hovering in the kitchen doorway, clutching a tissue. Gabriella was perfectly poised on the couch, her makeup done like she was going to a business meeting instead of a family fight. Christian was nowhere to be seen, probably sent to a friend's house to avoid the drama. I took Dad's old armchair by the window. Sitting in his spot gave me strength. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Andrew always hated silence. It makes him anxious. Sure enough, he started talking. We've been discussing this, he gestured to the room, and we think you're not seeing the bigger picture. Dad's will is causing unnecessary stress. We have a proposal. Their financial advisor friend pulled out some papers. That's when I noticed the logo. It was from the same firm that manages Mom's house mortgage. Interesting. The proposal was exactly what I expected. They wanted to change the inheritance. Basically, they'd get immediate access to their full portion plus temporary control of my share to help manage family assets better. In return, they'd set up a repayment plan for the loan starting in 5 years. I let them finish their pitch, then I pulled out Dad's ledger. Before we go further, I said, let's talk about the Mountain View property. The room fell silent. Aunt Linda suddenly found her coffee very interesting. For those asking, Mountain View was Dad's rental property. 3 units, fully paid off, steady income. He left it to Mum in the will. At least that's what everyone thought. The Mountain View property isn't important, Andrew said quickly, too quickly. I opened the ledger to a marked page. Really? Because according to this, you took out a second mortgage on it 8 months ago, using Mum's power of attorney while Dad was in the hospital. Did you tell her about that? Andrew's face turned pale. What is he talking about? Mom's tissue fell to the floor. It was temporary, Gabriella jumped in. We needed money for an investment opportunity. It's all under control. Under control? I turned to their financial advisor friend. Is that why the property is in danger of foreclosure? That's when Mum started crying. Not just quiet tears, but deep sobs that made everyone flinch. My units! Brooks and I bought those when we first got married. Our retirement plan. Andrew shot me a look of pure hatred. You had no right to dig into private family matters. Private, like forging my signature on loans, or like the 3 credit cards you opened in Mom's name. More silence. The financial advisor started gathering his papers. That's different. Andrew's voice had an edge of desperation now. We were protecting the family's interests. You've never understood what that means. You just travel around with no responsibilities. While we lost $500,000 in online trading, I cut in. You borrowed against every asset you could find and maxed out. Christian's college fund. Gabriella stood up suddenly. You think you're so perfect. At least we're trying to build something. What do you have? Empty apartments in different cities? Photos of places nobody cares about? I have no debt, I said quietly, and I have Dad's trust. That's when a small voice came from the stairs. Is it true about my college fund? Everyone turned. Christian sat on the middle step holding his phone. He must have been listening the whole time. Honey, go to your room, Gabriella started. But Christian cut her off. I recorded everything, he said, his voice shaking. Uncle Dom wasn't lying about them stealing, was he? The next few minutes were chaos. Gabriella crying, Andrew yelling, Mom sobbing about Mountain View. Aunt Linda and Uncle Pete slipped out during the confusion. The financial advisor handed me his card before leaving. It turns out he had been trying to warn the family about Andrew's schemes for months. Christian came and sat next to me. He quietly took the armrest of Dad's chair. It was a small gesture, but it felt huge. Finally, when everyone had shouted themselves hoarse, I pulled out the last document, Dad's amended will with the repayment conditions. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Mountain View goes into immediate trust management to stop the foreclosure. All credit cards in Mom's name will be cancelled. Christian's remaining college. Fund will be frozen in a new account. Only he can access at 18. And you two. I looked at Andrew and Gabriella. Start mandatory financial counselling next week. Or what? Andrew spat. Or I take this folder of forged documents to the police. More silence. Mom finally spoke up, her voice rough from crying. The units, can they be saved? Yes, I assured her. Dad left enough in the estate to cover it. But Andrew and Gabriella must agree to all the terms. I passed out copies of the repayment plan. As they read, my phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Wilson. Your father would be proud. Before anyone could argue more, Christian spoke up again. Dad, just sign it, please. I don't want to have to show everyone at school what you really did. Andrew's face went pale, the recording his own son. Gabriella signed first. Andrew followed, his hand shaking with rage or shame. Probably both. As I drove home, the messages started flooding in. Threats from Andrew, tearful apologies from Mom, a long text from Christian asking if he could come stay with me for a few days until things calm down. Tomorrow, we meet with Mr. Wilson to make everything official. But something tells me this isn't over. Andrew's too proud, Gabriella's too desperate, and there are years of family issues to sort out. At least now everyone knows the truth, even if they didn't want to hear it. Final update. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and I've been waiting to post this until everything was finalized. What happened wasn't just a resolution. It was the complete breakdown of my brother's carefully built facade. Some might call it karma. I call it justice. The morning after our family meeting, Andrew made a huge mistake. He tried to empty Mom's accounts, all of them. What he didn't know was that I had already frozen everything the night before. His attempted theft sent off a fraud alert and started an immediate investigation. Here's where Dad's smart planning really showed. Those USB drives he left in the garage safe held years of recorded conversations. Dad had been keeping track of everything. Every loan request, every lie, every manipulation. The last recording was from his hospital bed, with Andrew desperately trying to get him to sign over power of attorney. While he was heavily medicated, Mr. Wilson helped me carry out the plan perfectly. First, we submitted all the evidence of the forged signatures to the authorities. Then we exposed the credit card fraud. The look on Andrew's face when the investigators showed up at his office was priceless. One of his colleagues even emailed me the security footage. Gabriella tried damage control, calling everyone in their social circle with stories about how I was ruining the family. But remember the financial advisor from our last meeting? He had been keeping his own records of their schemes. When he showed evidence that they had been running a small investment scam among their friends, their social circle turned on them fast. The school situation worked out in a surprising way. Christian, my brave nephew, had forwarded all his recordings to the school board. Not only did they give him emergency financial aid, but they also started looking into the donations Andrew and Gabriella had claimed on their taxes. Spoiler alert, those donations didn't exist. Mom finally got to see their true colors when Andrew, in desperation, tried to blame everything on her. He said she had authorized all the loans and credit cards. That's when I showed Dad's final video message, recorded a week before he passed, explaining how Andrew had manipulated and stolen from both of our parents for years. The Mountain View property, saved and restructured. Mom's retirement, secured. Christian's college fund, not only recovered but tripled, thanks to Dad's secret investment account that Andrew never knew about. The best part? It had been set aside just for Christian since he was born. But the real satisfaction came from an unexpected source. Remember Aunt Linda, who sat quietly during our family meeting? She finally admitted why she had protected Andrew for so long. He had been blackmailing her with fake evidence of tax fraud. When we exposed that lie, she provided years of emails showing how Andrew had manipulated and taken advantage of every family member. The dominoes fell perfectly. Andrew's firm suspended him pending an investigation. Their country club membership was cancelled. Apparently, they had been charging thousands to other members' accounts. Their dream house is in foreclosure, and their social circle has completely cut ties with them. 3 of their friends have filed lawsuits over the investment scam. Gabriella's last attempt at redemption backfired spectacularly. She tried to hold a press conference. Yes, really, to make herself look like a victim. That's when Christian, my smart nephew, released group chat screenshots showing her planning to take advantage of more family members. They're moving out of their house next week and downsizing to a small apartment across town. Christian chose to stay with me for a while, with full legal support thanks to Mr. Wilson's connections. The court was especially interested in the recording of Andrew threatening to make him pay for exposing their schemes. Mom is doing better now. Yesterday, she helped me sort through Dad's old office and found a letter he had written to me years ago. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions, it said. Rock bottom has a way of building a foundation for better things. The family dynamics have changed forever. Most relatives have cut ties with Andrew and Gabriella. Those who haven't are keeping their distance. Mom hosts Sunday dinners now, smaller, quieter gatherings without the cloud of manipulation hanging over them. The real victory, Christian's transformation. Free from his parents' influence, he's doing great. His grades are up, he's making real friends. And yesterday, he told me he wants to study finance to help people, not hurt them, as he said. As for me, I bought the Mountain View property from Mum at full market value. Everything is legitimate and documented. I'm turning it into affordable housing units with a strict rule against letting Andrew or Gabriella ever rent there. It might be petty, but it's satisfying. Dad's last message keeps playing in my mind. Son, sometimes love means watching someone lose everything they took so they can find something real to build on. Andrew and Gabriella are facing several investigations, lawsuits, and complete social isolation. Their house of cards didn't just fall, it burned down, and I made sure to document every moment of its collapse. The family thinks I'm done. They're wrong. I've set up a trust fund for Christian that Andrew and Gabriella can never touch. Even when he turns 18, every penny they took will be paid back with interest through wage garnishment if needed. Their reputation in this town is ruined, not through rumors or lies, but by simply showing their own actions. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just watching someone fall, it's making sure they can never build their facade again. Christian is staying with me through the school year. Last night, he asked if we could frame Dad's last letter in his new room to remind him that doing the right thing is more important than looking right. It seems Dad's legacy will live on after all, just not through the son he was expected to choose. If you enjoyed this Reddit story and want to hear more, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more thrilling content. Your support means a lot. Thank you for being part of this journey.